Jordan Mica is a 9-year-old record-holding powerlifter. Today, I got the chance to sit down with him and his father, Jason, and talk about his strength journey.
There we go. All right. Well, first off, thank you guys so much for jumping on the SquatUniversity podcast. I'm super excited to talk to you guys today. But Jordan, I wanted to let you sort of take the stage at the start of today's show to brag about yourself a little bit, let everyone know about yourself. First off, tell everyone how old you are, first off, and let us also know about the most recent competition. I know you guys just did a few weeks ago and what you ended up doing there.
Yeah, so I'm 9 years old, and the last competition I did, I broke 3 American records for powerlifting. It was squat, bench, and then the total of those.
That's awesome. What numbers did you do in each one specifically?
Let's see. How much did I do for squat? Like one.
I'm looking it up, and we go in pounds, unfortunately, but
no, it's all right.
Yeah, it was 137 pounds.
Yeah, I think it was like, probably that.
That's so awesome. And how long have you been powerlifting?
So I started at 6, but I started competing at 7.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Now, Jason, I have a big question for you early on. What has your role been in sort of exposing Jordan to powerlifting, and has that role changed over the years since he started competing?
Well, Jordan has 2 much older brothers.
Okay.
His oldest brother is 26 and his middle brother is 22. So those guys both, they wrestled, they played all sorts of sports, and they all lifted. So Jordan has been seeing them, and our garage is completely converted into a gym.
I love it.
It's got like 4 squat racks in there.
Oh, it's awesome.
So over the years, since he was little, we would always just train.
Okay.
And he'd want to come in the garage and take a look at it. And that's sort of his introduction to lifting. We had a little tiny play bar on the ground, and every once in a while he'd pick it up. And as he started getting a little bit older, we started more work on the technique.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've seen that video you guys put on your Instagram sometimes of, I think, 2 years old, picking up the little barbell.
You know what's funny is that's like the only time you ever really did it.
Oh, right.
Every once in a while he'd come in and pick it up, but he didn't start structured or progressive training until probably about 6 years old.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, I know from, a parent standpoint, obviously there's a lot of parents that listen to the show that have young children, and they're wanting to possibly expose them into the sports of weightlifting and powerlifting.
Yep.
Do you have any advice for other parents who are in similar situations? Because I know obviously it takes a very special relationship to still coach your child as well. How has things been with that, as far as like you being the parent and the coach? And then also, do you have any advice for other parents who may be in similar situations?
Sure, 100%. And if you look at the earlier on videos and even the recent ones, we've always kept it fun. That's probably the biggest part about it is do your best to keep it fun. But more importantly, get the right equipment. Like if you plan on seriously bringing your child through their strength journey, definitely invest up front if you can in the proper equipment. I actually made some 5-pound bars out of like a galvanized pipe with some PVC ends. So he started out with that, and those collars fit your standard 2-inch plates.
Okay. So
we started with fractional plates. Just really take your time with it. Focus on technique. The way I always word it is Jordan is on a strength journey, and he happens to compete in powerlifting competitions when it's convenient. Right.
I like that a lot.
So that's the biggest part of it. We are 100%. And I mean, everyone, a lot of people that watch and follow are super experienced in powerlifting, and they might look at the programming that we use, and it's not specific towards powerlifting. I think if we were actually having him train to be an elite powerlifter at this age, that the training would look significantly different.
Yeah.
Right. So no, that's my biggest advice is, up front, invest in the equipment if you can. In our case, I made it, so that way it fit micro plates.
Yeah.
Which are Jordan's favorite to use. And we just kept going up slowly, little by little. And it's a strength journey, and he happens to compete in powerlifting when it's convenient.
I really like that, especially for young children. I think it's very important to expose them to a number of different sports, a number of different movements. I think strength training, though, as a entire practice, is so important for a young age to just learn how to use your body under load. It improves coordination, improves balance. And actually, there's a lot of research that shows that those who partake in a structured resistance training program at a young age actually have less injury risk with other sports that they play.
Right.
Which is really, really cool. Now, obviously, it's really important early on, like I mentioned, to expose kids to a variety of different movements. So, Jordan, next question for you. What other things are you involved in other than powerlifting? Because clearly we just see a lot of the strength stuff on Instagram, but what other interests do you have sport-wise outside?
So I actually do wrestling
Okay.
and I train jujitsu. So those are the two other things I do besides just powerlifting.
Very cool. How long have you done both of those?
So wrestling, what I do that in like second grade or first grade?
You're going on your second year. We had to take 2020 off.
Now, is that something that eventually in the future, do you want to try to gear more towards specializing in powerlifting, or you want to try to continue doing a variety of sports and again, sort of do powerlifting on the side? What's your plans for that?
I think I just want to do like a variety of sports and like just for powerlifting to just get like stronger with it.
I like that. I like that. Now, I gotta ask, one of the coolest things I love about all the videos is that it looks like you are having so much fun training. How much fun do you have lifting with your dad?
Well, it's actually very fun because I get to like lift and I like being strong.
Tell
And
me
it
about the
is-
dancing. I see the dancing before some of the lifts.
Oh yeah, so I actually started dancing like when I was like 6, I think, because my dad taught me how to actually dance.
Yeah?
Or he would just pop off.
That's what you guys don't see a lot of.
Well, we got to see some of those videos too on Instagram soon. So do you feel like the dancing gives you a little bit of energy before some of your lifts?
Yeah, it's fun to do after before some of my lifts.
Definitely. What are some of your favorite lifts?
Well, I think the funnest one is bench, and my favorite is actually deadlift.
Very cool, very cool. What's your best deadlift?
Like my heaviest.
Mm-hmm.
So in competition, it was 165.
Wow.
165 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get there in kilos one day.
Oh, kilos, man. He's definitely not having fun.
Now, Jason, as far as obviously being the parent and also the coach of a youth athlete in this strength sport of powerlifting, have you received any type of pushback from other parents or just other people on social media? Obviously, you run his Instagram account. There's a lot of misinformation still out there. And I'm really surprised every time I feature a young athlete like Jordan. You've been on the SquatUniversity page a few times. A lot of people still have a lot of misinformation circling around, how harmful it can be for young athletes to load a lot of weight like that.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that we actually have a powerlifting team back in 2019. So we had quite a few folks that train in our garage gym, and those adults, they completely understand and they enjoy what we're doing, but they also got to see exactly how Jordan trains. I think that's the biggest difference, in terms of people's opinion, is if they actually see the entire process, which we're not able to really show on video. And when we have, it gets like 10 views, it's like an hour-long video.
Yeah.
So I think with that, for me, I feel confident that everything that we do is safe. For our inner circle, the ones that compete alongside of him, they see and they know that the training that he goes through is very similar to theirs, which is very slow, very progressive. If you look at the lifts, at least in my opinion, a lot of those aren't really like quote unquote max effort lifts. I think the bar speed still looks really good. The technique is there. Our philosophy, even though we don't, but we probably should, in the powerlifting meets, Jordan has never gone 9 for 9 in the lifts. So we do put forth some effort, but we follow a pretty, in terms of his list, but we do follow a pretty strict golden rule, so to speak.
Okay.
In his last competition, when he deadlifted 165, what we did show, and I did make a post of it, he tried for the American record, which was 182 pounds. So we put 180, we called 183 pounds. And how did that go for you?
So I pulled it as hard as I could, but I couldn't get it, so I just stopped trying to pull.
Right. So like, what's our rule, especially when it comes to heavy deadlifts, when you give a good effort to pull?
So if you pull like as hard as you can and try your best and it doesn't go up, then you just stop it.
Yeah.
Because then you might like break form or like that.
So for us, again, and the folks that we train with see this, especially on the deadlift, if he knows he's giving a good effort and it doesn't move almost immediately, he stops. Right. And the deadlift's the only one that we kind of take that risk on. The squat, we go into it with a very good idea of what he's going to be able to hit, especially for his third call. And he's never missed on that because I just don't feel comfortable with how a child would miss on a squat, even though we have excellent spotters there. We totally have faith in the spotters and stuff like that. But our inner circle, I mean, you've been on social media, you see all of that. It is unfortunate that I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we're just trying to do our best to showcase his journey.
Yeah. I love that, how you're talking about it still as a strength journey and he competes in powerlifting, because I think it keeps the focus in the right place, especially at the age that he's at, being able to really make sure that, technique and form are the most important variables, and the strength will come, but there's no rush.
Right.
So let's take some time and dive into that process, because I know you said a lot of the times when you try to make a post on something that sort of really exposes the process of training a young athlete, it gets like 5 views. And I think it's so true, because that is the social media age, is that a lot of times really good and important information is sometimes overshadowed by a lot of the virality of certain posts. Everyone wants to see Jordan obviously hit a PR lift. Obviously that goes viral per se, and everyone loves to see that. But I think there's still a lot to be said for the underground training that most people don't see. So what are the things that you have really set in place as the fundamentals for training that you think people need to know about?
Sure. And then also just to quickly touch on what you just pointed out, as far as, when we do post longer videos, a lot of our Instagram live posts have a lot of our training philosophies, sort of our process. And we're so confident in the way he trains and the safety of it, is we've gone completely live with a full-on work up to one of his meets, because we always know sort of the guiding principles that we follow with regards to training. But yeah, like you said, it was only like 100 views. But as far as sort of our underlining principles, 100%, it's always long-term, and we think in that way of like jujitsu. I train him in jujitsu. He has excellent coaches that are far better than me in wrestling. But in our jujitsu journey and a lot of the messages that we use there, it applies to strength training. So there's so many things that we can do with regards to strength training, so many different techniques, so many different variations of, like, say, the squat, that it's best, at least in my experience and opinion, that we just focus on one thing, take your time with it, become very masterful at it, and your understanding of everything around that at some point in time will most likely apply to something like a front squat, an overhead squat, and all of these other different variations. But the main thing is, especially for youngsters, with the time that we have, it's best that we try to master, a handful of lifts and try to go through a great deal of variation. Because even though if somebody just visits our Instagram page, it looks like he trains all the time. Like, how many times do you actually lift in the gym?
I lift like once or twice a week.
Once or twice a week.
Yeah. Like once or twice a week, and the sessions are only about an hour long each. So during that small amount of time that we have, I think because we've focused on just the 3 main lifts, and people will argue about whether those are main lifts or not, he's been able to develop a very good amount of understanding and technique for those, and then just, over time get very strong in it. Yeah. So that's our biggest thing is we really whittled it down to those 3 core lifts. They just so happen to be the lifts that are used in powerlifting, but that's not the main reason we chose those, or at least not the reason that I chose those lifts.
Gotcha. So take me through like a normal training week for you guys. Obviously you're only training once or twice a week. What does, that type of training session look like?
You want to go through that, or you want me to?
I'll do it.
Okay, go ahead.
So normally I would go onto like the treadmill for about like 20 minutes.
Okay.
And then I get a PVC pipe and I stretch out my shoulders, and then that's the warm up. And then we start to lift lightly. So we actually start with the 15-pound bar, and then we work up to the 45-pound bar, and then we go however high we want to go that day. And then that's basically it.
We do our best to try to get in a full SBD, but
Gotcha.
As you heard with Jordan, even though he's squatting well into the 130s and whatnot, his very first set with the squat is always with our 15-pound aluminum bar. So that's why I highly recommend that parents, if they're interested in that they, do their best to put forth the investment in some equipment that will allow them to progress slowly all the time. If all you have available is a 45-pound bar, in my opinion, that's pretty tough to coach someone this young.
Yeah.
Because then your hands are going to be on the bar the whole time, or you're going to try to, either you're going to insist that they try to squat 45 pounds, which in my opinion is tough, or as a parent, your hands are going to be on the bar the entire time.
Yeah.
And then, at least in my experience, that kind of takes a little bit of awareness and just his learning and a lot of things away from the process itself.
For sure. So talking about that process of learning the lifts, what were some of the bigger challenges that you guys ran into as far as learning the lifts early on?
I think the biggest challenge, which again, I do my best to address, is the weight. Right. So like for me, when I work with other people, other adults, and even other kids, I was a strength coach for our high school wrestling team for a number of years when my kids were young, the older brothers were younger. Is if you can properly do like an air squat and work into the full range of motion that, at least in my opinion, is required for a good barbell squat, then if you put a bar on your back and your form goes to, disintegrate, it's because it was just too heavy. So like that's the first thing I always worked on and have worked on with them, is really trying to get that real solid technique and positioning for the air squat. Yeah. Because that way we can address any mobility issues or anything like that early on, as opposed to loading it up and thinking that that's going to make it better.
That's a good point. You hear a lot of people nowadays and they're like, oh, I need to have a bar on my back,
right,
or I need to have weight on the bar in order to get into a good position.
Yeah.
And I like that. It's almost as if there are prerequisites for you in order to go up. So you have to be able to show a good air squat first. Correct. Then you have to be able to squat the 15-pound bar.
Yep.
And then you can slowly progress up in that.
Correct. 100%. Yeah.
Did you find any other prerequisites that you have, at least in your plan, for other lifts that you wanted to see before he could start adding weight and going up?
You mean for like the deadlift and the bench press? Well, the same thing goes for all of the lifts. The one that we're always most careful on is the bench press, because at some point in time that's passing over his face and neck. So, once we start working up to the work sets, I'm super careful about that as far as spotting it. There's always hands-on when it's crossing the face and neck. And then there's always hands-on when it's coming back to the rack position. But because we follow that same sort of mindset with all of the lifts, we're pretty confident that as long as the form and the technique is addressed up front when it's light, as we slowly start to go up, that everything's going to work out pretty well. And so far it has, not to say that works out long-term. I mean, his oldest brother he's a competitive powerlifter. He has some really good lifts out there. He's been injured during competition. And that's the one thing. And I think the reason why when we're in training, we never discuss breaking records or anything like that. I mean, we've even done that in our live sessions, because I always tell folks, like, when you start putting that, especially at this young age, when you start setting those standards for competition, expect to get hurt, because it's probably going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So when you're saying I'm going to be the strongest, I'm going to be the most elite, I'm going to break this record, and which is 100% great. You're entering a realm where you could introduce some injury or the likelihood of injury to your training. But as an athlete, as an older athlete, for me, not as a 9-year-old, as an older athlete, you accept that, right? But as a younger athlete, it is my job to kind of throttle things back a little bit, right? I think if it was up to him, he'd be trying to pull 200 pounds. But I purposely, and some might disagree with that, I purposely chart out the path for him, so that way he's not a 9-year-old. And I'll be honest, that way he's not a 9-year-old that's trying to pull 225 pounds. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's so important for a coach and a parent, especially of a youth athlete, is to also be the person that has basically the reins to hold them back.
Correct.
And I make this statement sometimes when it comes to kids lifting, but no one's necessarily going to remember like the 9-year-old that set the world record. As real as that is, I mean, it's amazing that he's able to lift such big weights, but we remember the senior athletes that break the senior world records, that like the IPF adults, things like that, because and a lot of times you see a lot of these really, really good youth athletes that only chase the numbers, and they push and they push and they push, and they don't have a parent or a good coach holding back the reins sometimes. And I think a lot of times either they get burnt out because that's all they're doing. They're not wrestling or jujitsu or having fun with other things. They're not having fun with the sport. They're not dancing, doing a little break dancing beforehand, so it becomes so structured and a job almost. And then either they get injured or they burn out too soon. Yeah. And I think a lot of times introducing them at a young age, having fun with it, but then also saying like, hey, this is how we're going to learn the basics so you can have longevity in this strength pursuit. So that one day, if you do want to be an elite full-time power lifter, you're going to have the ability to take that step because your body is still there. It's still structurally sound.
It's interesting for some of the points that Dr. Aaron just made. Have we talked about some of that stuff in the gym, just between you and Daddy?
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny that you say some of that, because those are the conversations that we have as coach and athlete, but more importantly, as father and son, is that, and he's never on Instagram. Okay. So like, let's just say if people look at the profile and it says managed by parent or manager, that's 100% true. Yeah. So he's never just browsing on Instagram, but occasionally I'll show him some videos where children are putting forth amazing effort, and I don't take anything away from them, but maybe the form and the technique is off, at least in my opinion. And, he's number one, he's able to identify that without me saying anything. He'll look at a particular squat and go, whoa, that's awesome. That's not safe. And it's because we have those conversations. It's like, and it's exactly that, and it doesn't take anything away from Jordan's accomplishments, but I have said that it doesn't matter what kind of records you set or break as a 9-year-old, if you get injured and can't do anything else as an adult, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he understands that and he's happy with it. He's fine with it.
Yeah. That's so awesome. And I think that's such a great thing that you're not hiding him from it, but also being that a little bit of a block for social media at such a young age, because, kids are extremely impressionable. And in our social media world, you only see the highlights.
Correct.
And if you're only scrolling through Instagram or TikTok and looking at other young lifters that are 9, 10, 11 years old, you're not going to see their warm-ups. You're not going to see their training. You're going to see their competition lifts and their PRs.
Correct.
And the big thing is that a lot of times that can cloud your judgment of what really is taking place as a majority of their training. And that most of the time, and I put a post up recently where I said the majority of an athlete's training, and this is weightlifting and powerlifting, is taking place between that like 70 to 80, 85% of their 1-rep max, the large majority of their training. Unfortunately, we always see only videos of people maxing out, and, hitting these big lifts. And it makes us only think that we need to be lifting heavy and again, concentrating on the numbers. And it can make a lot of people rush the process.
And that brings up a great point. And if we ask Jordan, like when we're in the gym, has there ever been a time when you try an absolute 1 rep max?
No, not really.
Would you ever want to be trying to max out all the time when we train?
No, because like if you get injured training, then how are you gonna get PRs in your competition?
That's a good point, my man.
Right. And so for us, we've had some comments to where they're like, that's not the championship mindset, or you should be setting the standards a little bit higher. And like for me, and this comes mostly from jiu-jitsu, like I don't think there's anything wrong with setting up a course when they're younger to where like just about everything is positive.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna experience all on their own, and they're going to want to at some point in time to really challenge themselves if and when they fall in love with whatever sport it is you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we look at jiu-jitsu or wrestling, he has a wrestling tournament coming up on Sunday. We've got weigh-ins today, as I indicated before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think it's necessary to build in failure, especially when it comes to strength training for youth.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they play their sport, for instance, wrestling, have you ever lost in a wrestling tournament?
Yeah.
Lots of times.
Yeah.
So they learned that and they figured that out all on their own without us having to work that into his daily training.
Yeah.
Right. So same thing with powerlifting. Like I said, he's never gone 9 for 9 in a competition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because number one, we know that we are gonna try to challenge him for that one event, for that one day.
Mm-hmm.
That we also follow pretty accepted form of guidelines when it comes to attempting a max attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I don't think it's necessary to build in some kind of failure every single training session, especially when it comes to lifting weights. Because I'll be honest, if you're doing that for a youngster, you probably are lifting loads that could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. If you're posting, or that you're training a young person and they're trying to max out in the gym regularly and they're missing attempts, like in my opinion, that's saying, man, you've exposed them to risk unnecessarily.
Good point.
An unnecessary point in their journey, and you just made that experience negative.
Yeah.
At least for us, right? That's sort of my mindset.
That's true. And if you're seeing a lot of that failure within the weight room, I think it takes away a lot from that fun and that enjoyment of the process, and eventually building that love of the sport that so many of us have found.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned obviously learning how to progress up to being able to take a 1 rep max, in competition. What advice do you have for parents that want to maybe allow their kids to safely find a heavier lift? Because I think when you look at the research, a majority of research that's put on for youth athletes of Jordan's age is around just resistance training. Now, there is a few papers that have been put out on Olympic weightlifting and maybe like 1 or 2 on powerlifting. Majority of them are just showing like, hey, following the course of a year of competitive, training and competition with these youth athletes, the amount of injuries are extremely low compared to traditional sports of like basketball, football, baseball. But there hasn't really been a lot of advice given to coaches, given to parents of like, hey, here's how you would progress up to safely allow for a heavier 1 rep max attempt. Obviously, it's a little bit different than having a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old take that attempt.
100%. For his regular training, and I've posted this in his post and also our live, is I 100% recommend that for parents that are interested in strength training, that they buy and invest in fractional plates. Like, really make this journey as long and positive and progressive as possible. And then also understand that there has to be peaks and valleys in their training. They can't just go up, 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 up. Otherwise, we'd all be as strong as the Incredible Hulk.
Good point.
Right. So that it's a very good idea. Even if as a coach, you don't think, oh, well, this is a time for us to deload because, it's been X amount of weeks. We've been through this type of cycle. It's like, no. Like some of these adult programs don't apply. Like I'll take Jordan up and we have a competition you know, we'll work up to it and then compete, but then afterwards, like the deload is massive. You know, and I just posted another video of that, like the deload is huge because there's no reason for us, at least, to try to pick up from where he last left off working up to the tournament.
Yeah.
Because again, we're not training as powerlifters. We're just saying, cool, you hit your max effort, you got your, you know, you set personal best. Now we're going to deload massively and slowly work back up again. And he'll say stuff like that. He'll squat. Like, how was the last squat session when we came back off of the deload?
Wait, like
the 65 pounds. How did that feel to you when you squatted that?
It was actually pretty easy, but it felt tiring.
It was tiring, right?
Yeah.
But the deload was huge, you know, for someone that can squat 137, maybe even 140 pounds. If you look at the squat, like we took a massive deload because we might only get in one competition next year. So I think for me, to parents, I recommend that is structure it to where, you know, you're hitting, you know, you're progressively increasing and getting the load up there, and then just purposely, whether they look, at least in my opinion, whether they look tired or drained or not, just deload, like just bring it down and start all the way back up, because there's really no rush. There's so much no rush at this age. I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah. Now, Jordan, do you have days where you come into the weight room and you're a little tired, or do you feel like you always have energy?
I do have those days sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you guys usually do when you have days where you feel tired?
So if I just don't want to work out that day, we don't really do that. We don't really work out.
Yeah.
That's important. You know, I think, again, at a young age, knowing, hey, this is a journey. We're not here to be on a schedule because this isn't your job yet. You know, this isn't you're not trying to be an elite power lifter yet at this age. If you're not feeling it that day, go do something fun. What else do you enjoy doing instead of lifting on those days?
Well, I actually game.
Yeah. What's your game of choice?
Fortnite.
Saw some of the videos, and you started your own YouTube channel, correct?
Yeah,
That's
I do.
awesome. That's awesome. Now, Jason, you have 2 older sons, correct?
Yes.
And both of them compete or competed in powerlifting?
Both of them have competed. The oldest one, he's now 26. He competed at a much higher level. And he's going to go back into competition. He did injure himself. You know, so Jordan 100% knows that injury can take place in powerlifting. Yeah. Right? And he's 100% seen the consequences of it, because his brother was in a bad way for quite some time.
Yeah. Jordan, what have you learned from your older brothers?
As in like training?
Yeah. What have they taught you anything, or do you watch stuff that they do and try to learn from them?
I actually do watch them when they're in competition, and I look at like their form.
That's good. What specific things do you think that your brothers do really well that you try to mimic?
Form, and let's see how they pull it.
Yeah. Now, Jason, did both of your sons start early like Jordan did?
We didn't. By the time I converted the garage gym over fully, our oldest son, I think he was about in the 7th or 8th grade.
Gotcha.
So they didn't start as early as him, or the oldest one did not. His middle brother, who's 22, probably started about 4th or 5th grade. So he was already doing some form of resistance training, strength work, in his wrestling. So his middle brother started wrestling as young as Jordan did. So from the 4th grade all the way up and through high school. Yeah. So as a result of that, you know, I did bring in strength training, and that's one of the things that I've always said in the house and to the folks that I work with is, you know, get strong and go practice and play your sport. Get strong and go hiking and biking and whatever else other activity you enjoy if you're not a quote unquote competitive athlete. Because I always put that get strong as sort of the foundation, the base for everything that you could potentially build on, at least for a physical lifestyle. And but pick something for your physical lifestyle that you genuinely love doing and have a great time doing. Like for wrestling, he spends how many hours a week do you spend wrestling in practice?
So we have, what is it? We have 2 practices, or I only go to 2 practices. There's actually 3, but each practice is 1 hour and 30 minutes.
And then
a lot of wrestling time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, tournaments too.
So he spends a lot more time wrestling than he does in the weight room.
Definitely. Now, Jordan, have you noticed that the strength that you've gained in the weight room has helped you become a better wrestler?
It actually has, because like if they're super good and I'm not like as good as them, then I can use a lot of my strength to get the advantage.
There you go. Have you found that any of your friends who also wrestle and play sports like you, that they're seeing how much stronger you're getting and they are interested in starting some strength training themselves?
Oh, well, what is it? I don't think I have any friends that want to do strength training, but I do have some that want to do jujitsu.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, yeah, you were saying something?
I think one thing that I have had conversations with other adults, and then even on social media, and we've kind of gone back and forth, is that I don't think a lot of people realize that there's a good amount of youth athletes that are in sports and athletics that certainly strength train, especially in wrestling. I know kids that are about his age on the wrestling team that are very good at wrestling as well, and they're doing some form of strength training. The one thing that I 100% recognize is maybe their parents did not decide to build up a social presence around strength training like how we did. So sometimes it can give the appearance that like Jordan's the only youth strength training athlete out there, even though you know, other federations have had youth divisions for quite some time. But like when you peel back sort of the background of other young athletes in football, wrestling, baseball, they're certainly, at least to my experience, doing some form of strength training.
Yeah. And I think it goes to show just how important it is to have coaches and parents for those kids, so that, like you mentioned, you can build up that foundation, but do so correctly and do so safely, because we have so many kids that are entering into resistance training so much earlier than we have ever before. I mean, I don't think I picked up, I think I maybe had my first barbell in my hands when I was in middle school. Didn't start getting exposed a lot to the lifts fully until that summer between middle school and high school. And you're seeing kids now 9 years old, 7, 6 years old, that are getting shown how to start doing some of these lifts. It's just so important for the safety aspect, and also so that they can learn how to be on the right track to enjoying it as something that they're exposing themselves to at a young age, but for the rest of their life, hopefully taking it and running with it, to have those coaches early on that can instill those values correctly.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right, last question for today. Got to tell me about your shirt, Jordan. What does your shirt say for everyone?
Go ahead and stand up.
This. Eat lumpia, lift heavy.
Now, for everyone out there that does not know, what type of food is that?
So it's not really an egg roll, but it's kind of like it. It's shaped like one, and there's big ones and smaller ones, and I like the smaller ones.
Yeah, is that one of your favorite food groups?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. One of my friends, Kevin Santana, his parents are originally from Laos. He would always make egg rolls, and they were by far one of my favorite treats I would ever have whenever he would cook for everyone back in Kansas City.
And we do have 2 variations of it because his mom is also from Laos. So we have the Filipino lumpia, and then we have the Laos version or Hmong version of their egg roll. So yeah, we enjoy both of those.
Yeah, so I know exactly how good it is. I would have a t-shirt of it as well. All right, well, it has been just such a pleasure talking with both of you guys today, and hopefully, I think what we're doing here and exposing Jordan's story to so many other people can help teach parents who have young children getting into strength sports how they can do so safely, with the correct mindset. So again, it's a strength journey, and they may happen to compete in powerlifting or weightlifting. And then again, as they get older, if it is something that they do fall in love with themselves, they make the choice to start taking it a little bit more seriously and specialize at that time. But we don't need to be building, world elite weightlifters and powerlifters at 9 years old, because, so much more of the world is available to them.
That is 100% accurate. That is our mindset. And I mean, it's great if we can kind of get that information out, because I think that kids his age can benefit from well-coached and structured strength training. 100%.
Definitely. So Jordan, what's in store in the future for you this next upcoming year?
As in, like, what I'm gonna do?
Yeah. What are you gonna do with all your sports?
So for wrestling, I will definitely still be doing that, and I'll be going into competitions. And for powerlifting, I'll probably do like a competition, because this year we did 3 competitions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or to calm it down a little bit and just do one competition this next year.
And those competitions fill up quick.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Well, I will definitely be on the lookout and keep on watching you guys and sharing some of your videos with everyone, so we can show everyone your journey that you're going on.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Hey, you're so welcome. And everyone else who's listening to this right now, go ahead and follow Jordan's page on Instagram. And if you're into gaming, go check out his YouTube gaming page as well. And until next time, guys, happy squatting.
They say that energy flows where attention goes, so I pay no mind. Why waste my time with all these negative cats scratching? So caught up in their egos, these people have lost.